Well, what's going on? Oops, my music isn't playing. There we go. Man, audio's actually working now. This is twice in a row. This is new. All right, cool. Well, welcome everybody to the stream. As always, thank you for joining us. Tonight we are going to continue with a mini that we started yesterday and kind of an impromptu stream. Words, they're hard. I literally just got too excited to wait for today to start it. We got a lot done on it yesterday, but hoping to finish it up maybe today or later on in the week. There's still a ton of detail left to do this thing. Still a ton of cleanup from mistakes or mishaps from yesterday. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at what we got today. So got my wet palette here. I went ahead and put on some colors with the really cool mini that we're doing today. So a few things that I want to get done today and get accomplished. I want to go ahead and start on the sword. I really haven't started other than doing some of the accent bits. I want to start cleaning up the breastplate a little bit more and really honing in the highlights on the shoulder pads to where I think the light source might actually be. So right now, when I did it last night, I just kind of did this generic spot on it, but I really want to start like focusing the light and moving that a little bit. There's some cleanup on the greaves that I want to do, as well as these little golden pieces on his thigh. So that's what the agenda is today. A couple things. For instance, all these like parts that I left black, I'm really going to start to bring out a little bit more, bring them a little bit to a brighter color. So instead of leaving them just black, I'm going to bring them maybe to a darker gray or a gray blue. Another thing that I want to accomplish today in sort of the cleanup, especially with the breastplate, is I want to start adding a little bit more of that blue color and pushing that out a little bit more, just to make it, again, those highlights from what would be the sky, really start bringing that out. I might also start putting in some yellow in some of the highlights, especially on the top of his helmet and on his shoulder pads, just because if this were a reflection of say the sun, it wouldn't be a white reflection, it would be a yellow reflection, especially if it was a highly polished armor set. So without further ado, let's start mixing some colors. So I'm going to go ahead and grab just my synthetic brush here, just so I can start grabbing some colors and doing some mixing. So first things first, let's start on our dark blue. So let's take, not dark blue, but our dark breastplate color. Wow, I can't talk today. So bringing in a little bit of white, a little bit of that blue to get this nice dark desaturated color going on. Add in some water to make mixing a little bit easier. Getting that nice and thin. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to grab my brush and let's start. Similar to what we did yesterday, we're not really looking to make it perfect right off the bat. Really just going to start blocking out where we want this darker color to be. I'm using a little bit of a smaller brush than I did yesterday because I want a lot more control with what I'm doing here. Now that I've kind of defined previously where I want all of my colors to be. So as you can see, I don't know how well you can see it. You can kind of see it how this isn't really a true black. It's more of a very dark bluish gray. And once I'm done actually putting this color down, I'm going to use a glaze to start blending it in so that it doesn't look like this really sharp jump that we've got going on here. We're going to do the same thing to all of these other areas that we left jet black. down here on the shin. Hey, what's up, dude? Welcome back. We're just fixing a little bit of our shadows here. Bringing out some more color, lightening up just a touch, especially in the places where light would be hitting. Wouldn't be true black. It would be dark, but not true black. So we're just lightening that up a little bit. As always, I did do a little bit of work off stream. For instance, I added a little bit of recess shading and stuff like that, just because it's always easier for me to do this when I have a little bit better lighting than what I have in this room. But it's also this miniature is just so cool. Like, I love it so much. I literally just can't help myself. I had to do some work on it. So, hey, what's going on, nerd? Appreciate the follow. Alright, so continuing with our cleanup here, we're going to start working on our pauldrons here. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of start with a blank slate instead of trying to go back and correcting what I've already got. So I'm just going to paint over it, and we're going to come back and do it, kind of just do it over again. Did I say pauldron? I meant greave. So like right in here, we're keeping a little bit of that black just right underneath his thigh, or his calf, to still keep that shadow effect. But again, everything else kind of more of this mid, not really mid-tone, but more of a less shade, I guess you could call it. I'm just going to keep doing this to all these different places where I don't want a bright highlight. About the one shot, yeah, I did. I just haven't had the chance to respond to them yet. I've been at work all day. Oops. Put a little bit of shadow right in these recesses on his shoulder. But one thing that I kind of noticed last time, or when I started looking this over, is I really want, you know what, let me adjust this camera real quick, because with this stage I'm really going to be pulling the miniature closer to me, so I need it to be, I might have to physically move it. I need it to come out a little bit more, like right there. So like for instance, these highlights don't really come all the way out to where I want them to, so I'm going to have to make a few adjustments there. So we're just going to take a little bit of this white, set it off to the side. And grab a little of our shade and just start mixing those together to get our highlight, and then maybe bring in a little bit more blue here. I really shouldn't be mixing with this small brush, but yeah, you know what? I'm gonna grab my big brush real quick. I don't want to get paint in the ferrule. this white paint that I have I love it for its opacity, and it's really great, but man, it is hard to mix because it's so thick. So I'm using this golden titanium white. Really good as far as coverage, really good as far as like opacity, saturation, but it's just so hard to mix. All right, so I'm going to start pulling some of these highlights closer to the edges. Kind of like that. So that makes the entirety of the armor look shiny instead of just that one spot on it. Now I'll go back and maybe add a little bit of shade and then really pull up the contrast on the bright spots there. I'm also getting rid of that one bright spot that I've got going on. I'm not going to go all the way out to the edge here because I do want some of it to be that darker color. And then we'll start kind of spreading the love down here too, because we've got a couple spots here that I wanted to correct. Kind of wanted to bump up the brightness a little bit. And this is a good opportunity to do so. And while I wait for this to dry, let's get a glaze going. And start blending in this blue here. Or this blue, this darker color. Yeah, looks good. I'm going to take some of this, and I'm actually going to clean up some of this stuff up top here. Again, because I really want to start pulling up the brightness on some of this armor because I think I got it a little bit too dark. But that's not a problem. Like I always say, any problem you can go back and fix later. It's not too big of a deal. Okay. Now while that kind of simmers, I want to go ahead and start blocking out this sword. What I mean by blocking out is I'm just going to start setting up where I want my highlights and my shadowy parts to be. So what I kind of want to do is I want to have a fade from really bright at the tip and fade up dark, be kind of dark in the middle, and then fading back to bright on the edge. And I also want to have some contrasting highlights. What I mean by that is they're going to kind of be counter to one another. So we might have a shadow here, but then the shadow will flip to this side. It's not really realistic, but you know, kind of what I mentioned on a couple streams ago is we really don't paint things necessarily to be realistic. We paint them to look good. So that's what I'm going to do with this guy, because I want this guy to look like a beast. So I'm just going to lay out where I want my colors to actually be, and then we'll blend them together later. So kind of like that. Add like just kind of a fuller down the center. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of brightness to that. And then we have this little piece of, I don't know really what to call that. It's not really decoration, but it's kind of is. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do with that, but in the meantime, we'll go ahead and do the other side. Now I'm going to take what I did, the pattern that I did on this side, and I'm going to flip-flop it on the other side. So it's going to be the opposite. Go ahead and map that out real quick. So on the other side where we had light, we're going to have dark, and where we had dark on this side, we're going to have light. Just somehow get in there and do mark, so I know where everything ends. Ooh, can't see. There you go. And again, I don't really know how this is going to turn out, because I've tried this particular technique on the blade a couple times. Haven't ever really been successful, but you know what? We'll see how it turns out. I'm liking how the armor is turning out so far, so you know, we'll see how it goes. So the next thing we'll want to do is we will want to go ahead and start blending the two. So for that, we're going to use a glaze. We won't want to use our big brush for this. We're going to want to use a smaller brush. Test it out on our finger. Good. And then we're just going to work on that edge, just to blend them in. This could be one of those things where we're going to need a ton of layers, and it's really probably not going to get fully done tonight, but we can go ahead and get started. And then what I'll also do is I'll start bringing in some more white. Start working up our highlights as well, like the middle of our highlights, which are going to be really, really bright. these ones that are in the middle, it'll be in the middle, but for the ones at the top, it will be more towards the end. So for this, it'll be right at this curve here. That's where I'm gonna put that highlight. And then ultimately, we're also going to do what's called an edge highlight, meaning we're going to take and all the edges around the sword are going to be super bright as well, as if it's catching and glinting the sun. Oof. This blend needs a little bit of water because it is not wanting to come off my brush. It needs to be thinned down just a little bit. Okay, and we're going to push up some more white. Starts building up that really bright highlight. Then once this highlight dries, we're going to finish off those highlights with a pure white. Just to give us a little bit more of that contrast. So I think that's the pattern that I'm going to go with. I think it looks decent. So we'll start the glazing process. So I'm going to take our bright white, mix in some water, so we get that 50-50 mix of water and paint. Test it on my fingernail to make sure everything's good to go, and we're just going to start blending these transitions. And this process might take a little while, but you know what? It's gonna look great, and so patience here is the key. I want to make sure that whatever we do, that we're making our transitions nice and smooth. We're not rushing. Making sure everything is nice and smooth. kind of use this glaze too to start helping him with the transitions from dark to light as well. Oops. I keep doing that every single time, every single stream. I don't know if y'all can see that, but I keep dipping my finger in whatever paint is to my far right. What a noob. So I'm adding a little bit more of my mid-tone here to my glaze, and I'm going to start back with those transitions on the blade from the dark to light areas. Trying to smooth that out as much as possible. So that looks nice. We might have to counter glaze. So start glazing up with the dark a little bit. That's okay. Just one of those corrections that we have to make every so often. One thing that I am noticing is I don't like the fact that I don't feel like I have enough blue in my darker tone, so I'm going to add a little bit more blue, a little bit of black to desaturate it. And I'm going to establish this as my new dark tone. For the sword at least. Just by glazing over what I already have. And that will give us just a little bit of a tint of this color versus like a hard line, like if I were to do that with some paint. I think that's looking pretty good so far. Okay, so let's start a little bit of bright pure white. We're going to go in and start really turning up our highlights here. On the tip of the sword, I'm really going to push the highlight out to the edge versus kind of coming up to the flat of the blade, just to give it that illusion of a kind of a specular highlight instead of a true highlight. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hopefully not ruin everything that I just did and do an edge highlight around the blade. So I'm going to grab for that. I'm actually going to grab my little small brush here. This is a Windsor Series 7 brush. I think it's one of their miniature series. I don't really like it a ton, but more than like their normal range. But it's really good for stuff like this where I want a really springy brush, right? So I don't want it to flex too much. So like doing edge highlighting, it actually works pretty good. Now the fun is going to be because it's got kind of this bevel on it, but that bevel is quite sharp, and I think I can get the edge highlight on it. Here's trying. Immediately messes it up. Something like that, just to kind of define that edge a little bit better. One edge is looking a lot better than this one over here. There. I like the way this is looking, really defining that edge and giving it that idea of being sharp, I guess you'd call it. Oh no. There we go. That's better. Do the same thing to the back edge like we did with the front. Not looking bad so far. We'll head back to our glaze. And try to make these transitions a little bit smoother here. color again. With some pure white. Like so. And we'll do so on the other side as well. Shocking, I know. Alright, so I'm liking where we're going so far. Dude, this paint is drying up way too quickly. What in the world? I'm using a wet palette. It's not supposed to dry up like that. It's okay. We can overcome this. Moving back to the breastplate, I'm just going to use some, tighten up these lines a little bit. And start hitting those transitions. Do so with our mid-tone as well. It's technically our first highlight. Because there really isn't a mid-tone with the technique I'm using. This paint is getting really dry, so I'm having to add a little bit more water than I wanted to, but you know, it's okay. Do the same thing up here at these pieces here, just working out some of those transitions, making them a little bit smoother. That's really gonna be the name of the game for the rest of the evening. It's just taking what I have already and refining it, making it look a little bit better. brightening up that armor a little bit, trying to really bring out the fact that it's not black, it is just dark. Now I just need to figure out what I'm going to do with this bad boy here. Thought about painting it gold, but that would put a lot of gold on the blade. I mean, it makes sense with the miniature that it would be gold. I'm just kind of undecided at this point. But in the meantime, I can work on some of the other things I need to do. For instance, on this greave here, I had to do some corrections because I made an error in how I saw the miniature itself. So I'm just going to add a couple of line highlights down here. That, just to bring out those cool little details there. And I want to blend in this transition a little bit better. And then add just a touch of pure white down here at the bottom, just to bring out the fact that it is supposed to be super bright. We'll reestablish our highlights here on those plates as well, because they kind of dulled after a few steps we took last night. Cool. Alright, so one thing that I have not even started on yet is the helmet, mostly because there's a ton of detail, and it's really cool detail. I just haven't started on it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and base coat it in our shadow. Just going to take a while with this smaller brush, but I really want to control where my paint is going, because I spent a little, some good amount of time on the face, and I really don't want that to get messed up. This model is so freaking cool, guys. I really am glad that I started this guy, because it's teaching me so much about painting, some of the new techniques that I've been wanting to learn for so long, but I've been kind of scared to start on. This has really been like one of those times in my like painting life where I've gotten a model that just inspired me to try something new. So I always love it when I find one of those, when I find a model that I get so excited about, that pushes my skills to the absolute brink of what I understand and what I know. And this has done exactly that. I didn't have to do non-metallic metal, but this, for me, this kind of almost paints itself, in that the way that this miniature feels like it should be painted is, you know, what I'm doing. And the fact that it does that, again, pushing me to do things that I wouldn't normally do, pushing me outside my comfort zone, and we're learning, which is always the goal. Never stop learning, because if you're not learning, you're probably dead. So while that dries, we'll go ahead and reestablish some of the highlights here on the breastplates. Make them a little bit more pronounced. Kind of like that. Do the same thing on the other side. Now, again, while that all dries, I want to talk about this gem in the middle of his chest. I was thinking quite a bit about what color I want to go with, and I'm thinking that I want to go with kind of a teal color. So I'm going to use this color called Marine Teal from Reaper, and that's going to be my base coat. So I'm going to go ahead and slap some of that down on my palette here. And go ahead and start base coating that. Happy with this color choice right now. I think that looks super cool because it's just enough of an accent to look different. Nice. And then once that's dried, we'll go ahead and we'll back it up with some Surf Aqua from Reaper, which is the way Reaper works their paints is they have these triads. So you can buy their Ocean Triad, which comes with what they call Deep Ocean, Marine Teal, and Surf Aqua. And they're all designed to be used together. So you've got the shadow, the midtone, and the highlight. So for this, I'm going to be using this highlight with a little bit of white and then adding a specular highlight on it too. So let's start with the midtones, or it's not really midtone, but midtones for the helmet here. Hopefully my paint here doesn't dry out too badly. See, this is where it gets complicated because there's some really complex shapes going on in this helmet. Some really cool designs. I'm not entirely sure how to deal with it, but we'll just start throwing paint down and see what works. Like, there's some really cool edges on this thing that obviously would reflect the light and catch the light and glisten. And there's some flat bits here that would definitely give us some nice areas for highlights. Really where I'm struggling with right now is trying to figure out where exactly the shadows would be, if any, because, you know, this is the part that's the most exposed to the sun. There are some pieces here that are kind of under edges and things like that that wouldn't necessarily come into direct sunlight, so we'll go ahead and kind of work around those. So the top of the helmet, I'm just going to go ahead and just slather this on because in reality, the very tip top of the helmet is where our light source is shining directly on it, right? So I'm assuming that the top would just be bright, that it would reflect the light completely, or at least it would be this lighter color that I'm using as my kind of base. So again, I'm just going to push this highlight all the way up to just underneath these lips. And probably what I'll end up doing too is going back with a wash and doing a recess wash on some of these like darker areas. Again, just really trying to figure out here because I'm not confident in my knowledge of how light freaking works to really know exactly how this helmet would look under bright light conditions. But you know what? Again, it doesn't look good, it doesn't look good. If it does, awesome. Who cares if it's exactly how light works? I'm a painter, not a scientist. I'm a doctor, not an engineer, Jim. Alright, so let's pull in some of our gray here. A bit of blue. Just a touch of black. And the reason we're adding the black is, again, to desaturate that blue, not necessarily to darken the color. In fact, we'll keep adding blue and white until we get to the lightest shade that we can, or that we want to get to. And now we're going to start doing some of our brightest highlights here. Start on the front. A lot of these details are very, very, very small, so I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful. Again, just going to hit a lot of these raised portions. All the edges, all of the places light would naturally catch. This is one of those parts in the detailing that really needs some concentration. So I'm probably not going to talk as much as I normally do. Some people might say, thank God. Catch all these little raised edges, and then we'll also go back, try to figure out where light would maybe catch as far as like the back of the helmet, some of these flat spots. There's kind of this flat here that would definitely need to be highlighted up. Bottom of this cheek guard, kind of bottom corner. So now we're really going to push the brightness. Grab us a bunch of white. I'm going to go ahead and use my larger brush for mixing, or a larger brush, not my largest brush, but so we want almost white. So we're doing something similar to what we did yesterday. For those of y'all who were here, we went from like a dark tone to kind of this mid-tony, but then we pushed the brightness really, really bright to start off all of our highlighting. So we're going to do this exact same thing here. Really push the brightness to nearly white. I want to be very careful with how I do this because I don't want any of this super uber brightness. Again, this is kind of one of those situations where less is more. We're really just trying to be very controlled with how we do this. That later. Again, we just want to hit all of these little raised edges that we have here. For this, we're not really using the tip of the brush. We're really going to rely on the side of the brush for this, because we really want that to be nice and controlled. Back to my first highlight because there's some spots here that need to be corrected. That we messed up earlier. Man, my wet palette is not doing its job today. Oh, my paint's drying out. There there are some really cool detail in this mini that would be pretty difficult to get highlighted correctly, but we're gonna try our darndest. I think it's looking pretty nice. All right, now it's time for our pure white. Color's not called pure white, it's called titanium white, but you know what? It's close. We're just going to start hitting the very, very tops of all of our highlights. We're also going to hit some of these cool designs. On his cheek guards. And there is like these little swooshes on the top of his helmet. That would definitely catch some light. At this stage, you know, I'm pretty much consigned to making mistakes, so I'll go back and fix a few things. But one thing that I wanted to try on the top of his head and on his shoulder thing, as soon as I fix some of the stuff on the shoulder thing, some of it looks like Trish. I want to try adding some color. Like some yellow color like we were talking about earlier, to kind of simulate the sun hitting it. We'll add that highlight kind of to the front. So we'll take a little bit of yellow mixed in with our white, just a little bit. We'll add a little bit, some glints here and there. On the top of some of this detail. Add a little highlight here on the front edge of his shoulder guard. edge of this little, I don't know what you'd call this thing. Just adding a little bit of color to some of these highlights, just to kind of simulate the sun hitting it. We'll also do the same on his chest as well, just adding a little bit of that yellow color. And again, it's something that's going to be a little bit more subtle, but I think it's going to make it look a little bit better. All right, so now that we've got that color, let's go ahead and start blending on the shoulder pad. A little bit more paint. Like that. We'll add some of this glaze too to some of these raised positions here. Just to give it that little bit of a brighter look and feel to it. Like that. All right, so one thing I am noticing is on this sword here, I want to bring out these darker spots here aren't really transitioned that smoothly, so we're going to add a little bit of glaze here just to help smooth out these areas. Again, make them a little bit less stark and a little bit more nice, smooth. So let's go ahead and get our reflections for this gem done. So it's going to go on the top of the gem. So one thing I'm noticing about this right now is it's not super bright. So I'm gonna finish up these little highlights that I got going here, and then I'm gonna add some white to it and really bring up that brightness on the top of the gem, and kind of use that darker, or this lighter, what was gonna be the highlight, use that more of my mid-tone. That's a little better. Not sure how well y'all can see that because that is a very small detail, but then with that we'll add just a dot of pure white on it. And this will give us kind of that highlight look. And then what I'll probably do is just on that I'll add a hold on, stand by. Got some stuff in my brush that shouldn't be in my brush. I might add a satin or gloss varnish over it just to make it look shiny. Cool. So I'm gonna let that be for now. Actually, pull back some of this glaze here, and it's a little bit better blending here. But then I'm gonna start working on some of the leather. There. Okay, so on the leather we used this earth brown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that earth brown, I'm going to mix with some leather brown. This is a really good way of brightening brown without desaturating it. And that's one thing that if you get into miniature painting that you'll figure out pretty quickly, or any kind of painting that is, that adding white or black doesn't only lighten up those colors, but it also desaturates it, so you get more of a, like if you add more white to a color, it looks more pastel. If you add more black to a color, then it just looks like a slightly different shade of black. So you really want to find a few colors here and there that will lighten or darken whatever you're using, without desaturating it too much. For brown, I use this leather brown by Reaper. One of the things I did with this off stream is I did run a few some Nuln oil along these edges here, just to give a little bit of shade towards the end. And we're gonna do the same thing to these little, I don't know, leather tassels. I'm not really sure what they are, to be honest. Stuff like that really didn't exist on medieval armor. We tend to, that's something interesting that a lot of people don't realize, and I didn't really realize it, so I'm not, you know, some brilliant historian or anything like that, but you really didn't have leather armor like we think of, right? Leather armor was not that common because, number one, it didn't work as well as steel armor or even bronze armor. And it's extremely expensive. Believe it or not, steel armor is, chainmail, for instance, is much cheaper than killing a cow that could be providing your family with milk, right? And instead using it for leather. Or sheep that could be used for other things, right? Like linen, stuff to keep you warm. Or wool, I should say, not linen. So it just isn't practical to raise animals for their hide. And hunting takes too long if the only reason you're hunting is for hide. So what do? Well, you use chainmail, because chainmail is much more effective than leather armor, and it's cheaper. But again, this is fantasy, so we can do whatever we want. That's the awesome thing about fantasy. Oh, for sure. In leather armor, don't get me wrong, leather armor existed. For instance, hoplites, Greek hoplites, wore leather armor, right? It was a hardened leather, and it had bronze or brass trauma plates in certain areas. But you got to think, the people who were wearing that were noblemen. These were the rich guys. Your peasants would not have been wearing leather armor. They would have been wearing, you know, thick gambesons, which are basically just cloth and padding, or they would have been wearing chainmail with maybe a helmet. And also, studded leather armor never existed anywhere. It's not a thing. What a lot of people mistake for leather armor is essentially rivets on armor that was essentially made for aristocrats, and it was essentially plate armor underneath cloth, like almost like that Roman, what is it called, anyway, the like classic Roman armor where you had like plates layered over each other, except that was underneath cloth and it was riveted to the cloth, so it looks like studs, but it's not studs. Because why in the world would you waste your money on putting studs on leather at random places when it offers literally no protection? And it just costs more. Like, it just doesn't make any sense at all. Alright, so now I'm going to move on to fixing some of these highlights here on my little golden plates here. So I kind of screwed some of these up yesterday, but again, anything can be fixed with enough paint. So what I'm doing here is I'm really pushing this contrast between light and dark a little bit greater than I did yesterday. Especially on these little spiky things. I don't think I did a very good job yesterday on these spiky things. Just needs a little bit of cleaning up. Whew, almost dropped my boy. And Calico's not even here. That would have been tragic if she missed a blooper. All right, let's start working up some of these highlights here for the gold. I'm gonna make this highlight a little bit larger because this is supposed to be like polished gold. Fan of the way that looks, but we'll finish it out. If we don't like it, we can always come back to it. Pulling out these highlights just, again, right and as contrasty as possible compared to what I already had. And this time I'm kind of doing it at an angle, almost as if the light is catching it just on the edge there. Looks a little bit sloppy. Let's clean it up, and then I think what I'll end up doing is using a glaze to kind of minimize that the larger highlight. Move the brightest part back towards the center. Just to make that a little bit less super bright. Kind of like that. That's a little bit better. a little bit better. Okay. So I've done leather, done that, fixed that. Now I think I'm going to move on to this greave here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight towards the center. Kind of towards the edge. And then emphasize these little ridges here. What's up, Calico and SJ? What's going on? Yeah, I can turn it up a little bit. I think some of it too is because I'm leaning forward past the microphone whenever I'm painting. So let's grab a little bit more of this highlight and again, emphasize any of these raised spots. Well, if she's not excited about tomorrow, then I am. Stop, Calico. You're going to jinx me, and I'm going to drop it, and I'm going to be sad. I almost dropped it earlier. So, you almost missed it. Oh my gosh. SJ. That's hurtful. Not really. That's a little bit better than it was yesterday. What color do I want to make the... You know what? Let's go with gold. I've been trying to debate what to put like this little inlay thing here. Let's just go for gold. By gold, I mean we're going to start off with poop brown, basically. And same on the other side. What pops? Oh, you mean like from when I'm like bumping into it? And also, how does that remind you of a cat? Oh, you're talking about like when I do the like plosives or? Gotcha. Dude, this mini has so many really cool details. It's kind of hard to figure out what I need to be focusing on sometimes. Makes my ADHD brain go, what? So I just realized that I'm broadcasting my desktop audio, so y'all hear every single time my Slack goes off. I need to mute that. Hold on. That was probably a little bit annoying. Alright, so moving into our first bright highlight. I can't hear any popping, no. I mean, so Slack was going off and it kind of, the Slack notifications, which is like a messaging system, makes like a popping sound, so that might have been it. Because it's been going off this whole time. Yeah, my board gaming group has a Slack instance instead of Discord, like a bunch of nerds. And so they're messaging back and forth about some new games that just dropped. What's going on, Cal? that's looking pretty neat. And we'll bump up the contrast even more with some nice white highlights here. Made a little bit of a mistake there, but we can go ahead and correct that real quick. No big deal. It's looking pretty nice. So what I'll do now is, instead of doing that kind of yellow white, we'll go to pure white and just hit the absolute top, a few of the edges here. I think that looks really, really cool. All right, cool. So let's move on to the rest of this little filigree here. And I'm just really going to keep it most of it brown and just highlight with this white. Just to give it kind of that idea of being gold, but not really go into as much detail as the rest, because this particular bit is so intricate and I just don't have. We can try it. I think it needs a little bit more of this actual like gold color versus just the brown. There. Now I'm going to make the actual wrapping of the sword. This nice leather. make sure that I spread a lot of this paint around because it's really starting to cover up some of these wrapping details. I don't know, guys. I think he's looking pretty good. What do you think? Still trying to decide on what color I want his hair to be, though. I think black is what I had decided on, but I'm kind of second guessing myself. But we'll move on to something else and come back to that. So what I'm going to do now is there's a couple things I need to get done. He has this like cloak material underneath his armor here and right around his neck here. I need to paint the skull. I'm going to leave this ground as it is, or I might add a wash to it just to kind of keep it that ashy look. And then I just have to attach his wings. So I'm trying to decide, because normally what I do for cloaks is I kind of go for this canvas color. I've already used red, so it would keep in with that theme. So let's go with red. So I'm going to come back to this Corn Red by Citadel as my base coat. And we're just going to start slathering it on there. Normally when I'm base coating, I don't try to be super accurate with what I'm doing, but because I'm doing this last, which I probably shouldn't have, I am being exceptionally careful so I don't get any red paint on the bits and pieces that I've worked on quite hard. So one interesting thing that I've come to realize when painting this model about the model itself, and that is the actual care and detail that the modeler put into this mini. So obviously we have these giant wings that are going to be covering the entirety of his back, with a very narrow piece in there being shown, and yet we have all of this wonderful detail on the back that we had to paint. It just shows the care and detail and thought that went into this miniature, that even if I decide to plug those two holes and not attach the wings, that I could do that because there's still so much detail back here. Yeah, I like that red. I think that was a good decision. All right, so we'll move on to our highlights. And as usual, we're gonna mix up some fire red with some of this corn red to get our mid-tone. Ironic, I'm getting very, very excited because I feel like I'm going to finish him up tonight, maybe. So I'm getting kind of excited. I will still have some finishing touches to do, I think. But the fact that I never thought I would be done in, see, 2.5 hours last night, 2 hours today so far. So, you know, that's... Never thought I'd be done this miniature in 6 hours. I thought it was gonna take me so much longer. So I just need to make sure that I'm paying attention, that I know what I need to get done and get it done instead of rushing through everything. So, while that dries, where is my... Here it is. My Nuln oil shade. I'm going to take a little bit of this and I'm going to put it on this handle. And what that's going to do is it's going to make all these little details on this handle just absolutely pop out. Again, there's a reason why they call this stuff liquid talent. Pull away some of it just so that it's only sitting in the recesses. I'm going to change out my water. Nice clean water. Okay. Now I want to grab some of this here. This is Pallid Witch Flesh by Games Workshop. And I'm just going to use that. There, he has these kind of wraps underneath his gauntlet, or half gauntlets, whatever you want to call them. I'm just gonna use this to kind of give it a little bit of color. Cannot see. Some of the stuff that I need to do is in a really awkward position. Yeah, there we go. And then we'll add a little bit of this Nuln oil again. To make it, in this case, we're not looking to bring out any detail because there really isn't any detail. I'm trying to make it look darker and a little bit grittier and a little bit dirtier. All right, so let's go ahead and start on our skull here. So I'm going to use some skeleton bone by Army Painter as our base coat. Now this stuff is unbearably thick. Actually, you know what? We'll use some Xandri dust as our base, and then we'll use that as our midtone. But anyway, as I was saying, it's almost unbearably thick. It's ridiculous. I don't understand. It's like the thickest paint that Army Painter has in their line. It's really annoying. So I'm going to switch to my number 3 brush here. It's just a little bit bigger and will help me get through this a little bit faster. And just trying to make sure that I don't really hit any of the rocks around it. Mostly because I want to keep those as they are, so I don't want to have to go back and repaint them. It's super weird. So like this keeps, I painted this white and it keeps coming back almost like a reddish rosy color, so I'm going to paint over it again with my pure white. I don't know why it does that. Especially since until the end there I haven't even used red. A little bit weird. Alright, so once that dries, we'll then go back and use our skeleton Army Painter skeleton bone. This is honestly one of my favorite utility paints out there. Besides being a good bone color, it's really, really good at mixing with things like brown to lighten it up, kind of like what we talked about earlier. But it also does a really good job of creating the like a natural canvas look. I can mix it with like a light brown, get like a tent canvas thing going on with it, and it looks just spectacular. So it's a really, really good paint, but again, it's just, if I could find something that came close to it in its shade, I would probably use it instead, because again, this stuff is like, it's almost as thick as the white paint that I've been using, and that stuff is like, I have to use essentially a spatula to get it out of the daggum tub. Okay. And then we'll add some of that. Oh, where are you at? Nope, that's not it. Some of this bone color here, which is pretty close to it, but it's a little bit lighter. Actually, no, it's actually a little bit darker. So instead, I'll use my polished bone. I'm going to take that and I'm going to mix it in with a little bit of this skeletal bone, just to bring down the brightness a bit. this is really going to be our highlight here. Get rid of some of this pink because I really want a nice point. And as always, time to use a glaze to do some blending here. Because we want those nice smooth transitions there. And while we do that, we'll also do a little bit of wet blending. It's more feathering, but it's kind of the same concept, honestly. And there's our skull. All right. Trying to think of what I need to do next. Some highlight corrections in here. Everything I'm doing now, I'm really just messing with things. In my opinion, he's done. But I'm just going to keep messing around with stuff here and there. See if I can improve on what I've already done. I'm not going to spend terribly much time on it. All right, so there's one more thing that I need to do, and that is blacking out the base. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab my black and get it nice and watery. Oops, there we go. I'm just going to go around the base here. I'm just going to black out the rim of this base. Once we're done with blacking out the base, really the only thing that's left to do is applying that wash to the base I was talking about, so on the rock. And then just going through and seeing if there's anywhere where I can apply a pin wash, or I should say a recess highlight. To maybe darken up a few of the recesses here and there. outside of that, we are darn near there, y'all. A little bit more white so we can get this paint flowing a little bit nicer. Okay. Go ahead and throw this back on the base here. And I'm going to use that Nuln oil that I was using earlier to, I'm going to scoot this out of the way real quick, to bring out some of the details on this rock here. And I'm just going to slather it on there. And what this will do is it'll run into all these recesses. And it's going to highlight all these little pop marks and grooves and ridges that are on this base. Make it look a little bit more like rock. Oh boy, we are almost there, y'all. I am getting excited. I think this looks amazing, and I'm genuinely like, it is not often that I've had 2 miniatures in a row, 3 really, that I'm just really proud of. This Elbereth and Mark, I've used techniques in all of them that I've never used before, and they've all turned out really cool, and it's been super encouraging. It's been awesome having all you here for that too. And really, starting the stream is what's pushing me to try all these new techniques. And so, like, y'all have inadvertently helped me become a better painter just by being here. So, thank you for that. So, let's see what he will look like with his wings on. That actually sounds really good. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just dry fitting these wings on. And that, my friends, is Cadriel. I have to say, I love it. This has been, yeah. I did not expect to be done tonight by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm really proud of how he turned out, and thank you all for being here with me. So a couple things. Obviously, I wasn't expecting to do a new mini on Wednesday, but obviously I'm going to need to grab one. So I've got a couple different options. I've got a skeleton pirate. I've got a female buccaneer human. I've got a human wizard. I've got a Githyanki fighter, and I've also got a mermaid. So what do y'all think? What should I paint next? Because they're all super cool minis. They're the same company that did Cadriel here. So what's your opinions? What do you think? skeleton. Yeah, it's a really cool model. Like, honestly, either way you slice it, whatever y'all choose or whatever y'all advise, it's going to be an amazing model. And it's going to have a ton of detail. So yeah. Yeah, the mermaid looks really cool. She's a little bit scantily clad. But still a really cool looking model with a lot of really cool details. I do have a couple dragon models that I could print out. So that's absolutely a possibility. I don't have any printed out just yet. I don't think I have enough resin to finish a dragon print. But that is absolutely a possibility. That's something I would love to do again. A lot of the times though with dragons, I will use an airbrush because they're so large. But you know, I'm down for whatever, honestly. You know what? I think I'm gonna keep his hair just like it is, because it kind of has like that dark undercoat with that white top. And it almost looks like it's like peppered or kind of white majestic hair. I don't know. Yeah, just leave it like that. All right, cool. Well, I have some ice cream in the freezer that I want to eat now. So, but yeah, I will post pictures of the minis that I have printed out. And we can choose together as a group, or if I don't get any feedback, I'll just choose. But yeah, thank you all for being here. Thanks for joining me. Love this mini. It's been super fun. So yeah, thank y'all, and hope you have a good evening. Peace.